Being able to do fieldwork in Australia is one thing, but being able to go overseas and do fieldwork in a completely different culture is a whole other thing entirely. And to be able to do that as a student is just a really great experience. My name's Mallory Notting and I'm currently studying my anthropology honours at James Cook University. Ethnography is being out in the field where you're engaging with your informants and participating in the activities and their day-to-day lives, which then informs your research. I went to PNG as part of an ethnographic field school, which was being funded by the New Colombo Plan's scholarship program. Students were put in pairs and each pair was assigned a mentor. So we were paired with someone who would be able to really show us the aspects of village life that we were particularly interested in. My mentor took me out gardening one day, and that's something that she did every single day. She sort of gave me the seeds, said, "This is how you do it, now plant my garden." One of the highlights was definitely dressing up in the traditional villas. They taught us a dance and we got the sort of the drums, and that was an incredible experience. There was the mumu that they did at the end for us, which is where they kill the pig and roast it in the ground. The night before, we sat with the women peeling vegetables for hours and hours. Being involved in that ritual, traditional aspect of life was a really special experience as well. It was also really fantastic to be in the field with an anthropologist who had worked in that village for many, many years beforehand. So it was really heartening to see the really deep relationships that she had with the people in the village. This experience for me really just confirmed that I'm in the right field and that I'm doing the right thing. This is the field I need to be in, and this is what I need to pursue.
I was in the state of Ohio. We were sitting around having lunch and somebody said to me, "Have you heard the story about the Australian airwoman who had her plane come down in a small town not far away from here in 1929? And I said, "I had no idea." And so I thought, I have to look this story up. When Jessie came out to Australia, she came out with a co-pilot, a chap by the name of Bill Lancaster. And on the way, they struck up a close friendship. Bill was really more keen on her than she was on him. Jessie became very close friends with another young, tall, dark and handsome man by the name of Hayden Clark. They wrote to Bill and said, "Bill, we're going to get married." And Bill, on hearing this, couldn't believe it, and on the way back to Miami, he bought a handgun and ammunition. That night after he got home, they all finished up in the one house, and in the middle of the night a gun went off and Bill came banging on Jessie's bedroom door and said, "Hayden shot himself." And she said, "We don't have a gun." And he said, "Well, actually," Bill claimed it was suicide. The police disagreed. District Attorney disagreed. After looking at all the evidence, they arrested Bill eventually. And a very famous trial ensued. Bill was acquitted. And by then they were regarded as being persons of bad reputation by the Immigration Department, and they were both booted out of the United States. The previous book had been written and Bill's story had overshadowed Jessie's, and I felt by now Jessie had been the person who'd broken all the records, and she was the person who went on to have the famous Aviator's career in America, and she really needed to have her story told. And it turned out that she'd written material which we could use to base our story on and allow her voice to be heard now. And she was a person who had flown in the 1929 Women's National Air Derby in the United States, which was the first national air race held for women. And she'd been friends with Amelia Earhart and Bobby Trout and all these big group of famous women aviators at that period. At long last, I think, I've now given her the chance to speak for herself and to be able to tell her significant story.
The world has become marketized, it's become highly based on economic outcomes, and within that the human service organizations, social work organizations and others struggle in terms of being able to provide their services as well as funding their services. So social entrepreneurship provides a very new area to work within, which is straddling both the social and the economic, and bringing in many of the resources, for example, from the economic world, which could be used towards dealing with social issues and working with marginalized people. There's a long history of social entrepreneurship in many of the developing countries, mainly funded through United Nations and others. There have been places like, for example, Seva Bank, which is the Self-Employed Women's Association in India, which started from women coming together to save and do small projects, and which has now turned into a very large bank, which is worth a very, very large amount of money, and they're able to continue social entrepreneurship projects through the bank itself. So microcredit and others have been ways by which social entrepreneurship has built in the past, but we continue to look at new ways by which we can do the similar kinds of work in Australia and in other parts of the developed world too, not just in developing countries. Many of the human service organizations here are looking at that because they need to look at ways by which they're not just dependent on government, but they can actually develop their own resources so that people can benefit out of the process. SESA is a network of people who are working in the area of social entrepreneurship, and the particular focus is on Southeast Asia. So I'm one of those who's involved with this process right from the beginning, and we have helped to set up this organization. We've just held a workshop and conference in Phnom Penh, bringing together the players from across Southeast Asia, Canada, Australia. Essentially, we have formalized the organization and set up key areas of research. For me, the really important part is that research has to be able to, one, impact on the communities that you're working with. Secondly, it has to be able to build skills and capacities, both of the researcher and the people they research with. And it has to have outcomes that will impact policy, that will make a change to how the world functions around us. So most of my research is focused towards innovative solutions that actually make this difference. Everything I do feeds back into what I teach. Because, for example, next semester I'll be teaching community work, and a large portion of what I've been doing is actually going to feed into the community work classes that we'll be doing. We'll be discussing with students how they can be better involved in these kind of processes. We'll be looking at ways and means by which they can come up with innovative solutions. And I'm really keen that in the long term, community work and other students can actually do projects that are part of these kind of processes. So while they are learning, they're also doing. And so they benefit out of it, the community benefits out of it, and well, it's a win-win situation.
The tropics are the area of the greatest linguistic diversity on Earth. It is the place where we still find languages which are absolutely unknown and undocumented. In this book, the majority of languages that focus are from the tropics. A big red book, it's very heavy actually, it's about 1,000 pages, the Cambridge Handbook of Linguistic Typology. And it's in the series of Cambridge University Press handbooks in important linguistics topics. Linguistic typology tells you why languages are different, how they vary, what to expect, what not to expect, what kind of languages we find, and how we classify them by the way they are organized. Once we lose a language, we lose a unique worldview. It's almost like when you get this news about the Great Barrier Reef bleaching. Languages are bleaching, languages are being lost, our world is bleaching and contracting. I think we need more students to study languages, individual languages, to study linguistics, which is a science about how languages are built. We are going to open this lab to the interaction between linguists and members of the community who speak languages which they feel are threatened and there is no or little documentation. And they'll be able to come and talk to us, our PhD students, and maybe some other fellows who are around, and just sit down and provide documentation for their languages. I hope that this laboratory will have a great social significance, not just linguistic significance.
Blueprint is on at Pinnacles Regional Art Gallery.
7th of October through to the 29th of October.
For the exhibition, I've created a CGI holographic experience, based on the stories involved in our anthology titled Omens. So what that entails is basically 4 images that are projected up through a plastic holographic pyramid to create one singular image.
I came to Australia in 2015 with my family, and I started to study at JCU. So people might think of Venezuela as a very tropical place, very touristic, and it is certainly a beautiful place, but the government has very deteriorated. I decided to create an artwork that represents the situation of the country that I live and all the protests that are happening because the world needs to be aware.
My piece for the end of year exhibition started off as an idea to create a wearable art garment. I decided that I would use black and white photographs, which I put together as a bit of a fusion of my adopted mother's life from childhood through to adolescence and marriage. And I fused that with my own black and white series that I created last year. And it's 10 years since my mum passed, so it's actually a really nice way to honour her and to finish my degree with that final note.
What do I want to do when I graduate? That is a fantastic question. I don't actually know. I've got all these doors opening, and right now I'm just putting my foot in the door as to what opportunities I can grab first.
I'm really concerned about the fact that by 2050 the weight of plastic will outweigh the weight of marine creatures in the sea. Catch of the Day is a public sculpture that I created because it spoke to my concerns about plastics in the ocean. It took me 4 months to make the piece. I needed to work with people that could weld to construct something that was going to be stable, and as in all pieces of art, I had to try things that perhaps weren't successful and try again until I came up with this solution of the plastic intestine. Actually, there's a story to that. Some people in Kuranda found large bones and discovered they were whale bones. The whale had died in Trinity Outlet just here in Cairns, and it had been taken to Kuranda and buried. The scientists found 6 metres of plastic in the whale's intestine, and that had probably killed the whale. So that story was one of the ideas that I heard about while I was making Catch of the Day, and so I integrated the plastic bottle tops that had been washed up on far north Queensland beaches into the intestine and stomach. When we talk about a catch of the day, it sounds like we've been fishing, we've caught a fish and we're going to have dinner. But to see this big fish that's actually full of waste plastic, debris from our own society, is, I hope, quite concerning and thought-provoking.
It's striking, obviously, how much plastic waste we're dropping into and spewing into the oceans every year. And there's additional stuff too. There's these so-called ghost nets, which are fishing nets that get away and tangle up whales and dolphins and manatees and all kinds of things. So it's incredible. This trash is dangerous. We don't know what its impact is going to be on food chains and eventually on us through fisheries. And a sculpture like this really does help to strike home and raise awareness about a really important issue.
It's absolutely incredible for this conference to come together. It's taken us nearly a year in planning, but we are thrilled with the buzz with our participants, our delegates, our keynote speakers. We've got Dr. Benjamin Burness, a Professor Sally Kift who started us off. We've had Hounds for Healing who've come and talked to us this morning from a community perspective. We have been listening to great practice, great research that's actually happening right across universities. We've got 56 breakout rooms. We've got 5 keynote speakers, and we've got guest speakers as well. So the buzz, the activity, the hive is just so impressive. Very, very, very excited to be able to share best practice and ways forward of what's happening in this mental health space. The obligation for us as a university to really ensure that mental health is everybody's business.
I'm so proud of James Cook University for running this inaugural Australasian Mental Health and Higher Education Conference. It's a discussion, I think, in Australia that's been a long time coming. It's a national discussion that we need to have. It's an international conversation. I'm aware that in other jurisdictions, the US, Canada, the UK in particular, everyone is now starting to galvanise around what might be considered to be somewhat of a crisis as regards our higher education students. We had the choir presentation. I think the whole conference has set a lovely tone. And when you think about one of Ben Vanessa's serious recommendations, it is that a tone needs to be set. It probably needs to be set from the top, from senior management, but I've always considered that it is a top-down, bottom-up, and sometimes also middle-out approach that we need to adopt to make sure and respond to the challenge that mental health and the success of our students is everybody's business.
Right away. All right.
So today's a culmination of the Burn and Grow inquiry that's been developed by the Inquiry for Indigenous Science Students program. So this program is part of the CSIRO's Indigenous STEM project, and it's funded by the BHP Billiton Foundation. What a great opportunity to take advantage of the Indigenous learning space and link that traditional ecological knowledge with our CSIRO researchers who are conducting science related to fire right now. And it's a great collaboration because the kids are able to do the activities, meet with elders, use these types of spaces, and also see how that flows through to current STEM fields and STEM related employment in our current economy now.
This does make school fun. At our school, we have like a girls yarning group. Seeing it at the James Cook University is actually wonderful, just to know that how much they involve Indigenous kids and students, as well as our elders.
Now we're going to go for a walk with Uncle Russell to learn about all the heat and science-related plants and animals that exist around us, and how we use heat and fire to build knowledge.
I'll show you what I mean.
Whew.
Sam is one of our graduates from the Grad Dip program who now teaches at Thuringowa, and it was critical to have a partnership with someone who knew what we were doing in terms of Indigenous knowledges and sustainability, because he mentioned when he was a student here he did not have much of the Indigenous knowledges embedded into his program, and so that's why it's critical that we've now, with the new Masters of Secondary that we're designing, embedding Indigenous practices into the teaching program.
You're welcome.
Today is a very special day to be celebrated in this way as an outstanding alumni, totally unexpected, and so much of what anyone like me, I think, that accepts an award like this can contemplate all the people that we've built our experience with and who have been part of our journey as well. And so one person gets the recognition, but it's never alone. It's always with a tremendous amount of people who have contributed to the opportunities that come up. The DV service was funded in 1994, and over that period we've actually had James Cook Uni social work students on placement. And so we've had over 110 of those students in the organisation. We usually have 2 or 3 at a time. Their placements go for about 3 months, and we actually help them translate their academic learning into practice. Well, our ultimate aim is to stop domestic violence in our community. That's the ultimate aim. Why would we have women and children in our community, in our suburbs, in the homes, in our neighbourhoods where violence is occurring? We've got to change that, the attitudes and beliefs that underpin that use of violence. And so that's what drives us. That's what our work is, and that's what we're aiming at.
As an ECR, I was one of 4 of us that presented today. We had 2 guys from the HDR, which was really good, looking at education and looking at English literature. And our experienced academic, Alison Craven, she talked about her new book and how she looks at fairy tales. And we did really, really well. We got 2 runner-up prizes, which is pretty good because there was probably about 40 people that took part altogether throughout the day. I was runner-up in the ECR category, which is known as the Early Career Researcher category. So that's anyone that's finished their PhD within 5 years. And I was very lucky to win runner-up, and I'm very pleased. Today I was talking about environmental communication and how you can bridge the gap between social sciences and sciences, and how you can use it to look at the sort of Great Barrier Reef, and you can look at the natural sciences and the social sciences, and all kind of understanding how the media reports on those kind of ideas and why they're quite negative and why they're never positive.
I'm looking at why do the media play down the environmental science, and why do they play up the idea of disaster? Or often they'll even ignore the science and just put it away in that it's too hard to deal with box.
Getting runner-up in the High Degree by Research division of the 3-minute thesis competition has been fantastic. It's given me a real opportunity to communicate my research to a new audience that I wouldn't otherwise get a chance to speak to. I presented my research on radical poets and their relationship to terrorism. The truth is that at times writers engage in some very questionable activities and some very violent political movements.
So then, we must keep a wary eye on all manifesto writers while we wait for Kim Jong-un's own collection of poetry to see publication, and content ourselves with his father's 6 operas.
So what we try and do, Creative Arts and Media, is give the students real-world opportunities. So the Townsville Fashion Festival, this is a really good opportunity. Part of their assessment for creative concepts of lighting is to do a fashion shoot in our studio. So we've got a brilliant tutor who's an expert in fashion photography, Matthew Gianalis. He was a student of ours and he's now running his own studio. And he's come back as a tutor to help the students with their fashion shoots. We're editing the student images to choose the images that will be printed up for the exhibition. And he has just won Commercial Photographer of the Year for Queensland. So we're very lucky to have him.
So this year I was asked to teach second year JCU students studio photography. And so as part of the Fashion Festival we teamed up together and we have a fashion photography exhibition out in the foyer. That'll be on display this afternoon, and then for the next 2 weeks in City Arcade in the city. So the second year students look really great there and I'm really happy with their work.
So this is our third assessment, which is Fashion and Portraiture, which coincides with JCU's involvement with the Townsville Fashion Festival. So if mine are good enough, then they will be selected to be in the exhibition, hopefully.
Today are a few JCU students, we know that, but they're also being back of house with us during the actual event phase.
I'm the head photographer for Townsville Fashion Festival, so I'm organising and coordinating all the photographers to cover the event. I've actually learnt so much in organising, coordinating, shot lists, what's involved, what marketing material they're after. So there's a whole gamut of knowledge to gain from being a part of such a huge, high quality event.
So today we are celebrating the work of 3 students of the BA 3000 Arts Edge course. These students have been doing an internship with me at the Museum of Tropical Queensland and here at James Cook University. What we can see today is a great display of the diversity of the objects in the material culture collection at James Cook University. This is a collection that's been going for 40 years or more, so it's a very diverse collection, and you can see here masks, figurines, weapons, bone daggers. You can see all sorts of different things from different parts of the world.
We have been slaving away in the dungeon of Building 4 for the last 3 months, trying to put this collection together. And the point of it is basically to showcase that it exists almost, because it's been pretty underutilised for the last few years.
The items that I've chosen to put into my cabinet here come from Indonesia, parts of Australasia and North America. Objects made from bone or have bone parts in them. My favourite item in this collection is the shaman's belt. It's mainly a belt of sinew with bones dangling from it. It was mainly used in ceremonial purposes such as blessings.
Some of the figurines that took my interest were the terracotta figurines from the Mayan culture. One of them looks like a warrior, and the other one looks like it might be some kind of a spiritual being. There's a lot of items down there, and it's very confined. The archive space is very tight. I learned to take off my backpack before I went in there and sort of hold my shoulders in, and just to avoid knocking things off, because some of them are really old.
So this exhibition is on display in Building 4, Level 1, and it'll be here over the summer break and into first semester next year.
I'm doing a cocktail between the Sorbonne University in Paris and between the JCU. And so my research is about how millennials perceive nature in the digital age, and how modern technologies, using computers, mobile phones and all that, how it changes our perception of nature. I'm gonna start fieldwork this year, and at the same time I'm gonna collaborate with Arthur and make a film about my research. Last year I made a short film for the Sorbonne University, which was called Nature. So that was about my work as a PhD student, my life, everyday life as a PhD student, having Skype interviews with my supervisors. Also, it was a way to present my research, to talk about the new definition of nature and how we are perceiving nature today and how this perception is evolving. It was selected to take part in a festival, short film festival in Paris, and that was really, really nice. But I didn't think I was going to make a film again. And then talking with Daniela and Jennifer as well, then I thought I have to do that.
So Altar is a small research group, mainly composed of PhD students, but also me who finished. We are welcoming also any other high-degree researchers who are interested and work with their audiovisual material in the research. Life on the River is our latest project. It's an exhibition that we put together, specifically 3 of us. Christian and Kasia, they went to Amazon, to Colombia together, and my field where I work is Papua New Guinea. So Life on the River is about 2 places in Sepik and Amazon particularly, and how people live on the river, what they do, what they like, how it looks like, a bit through photographs as well as videos.
One of the main concepts of my thesis is going to be wilderness. And in France, we don't have a translation for wilderness. We don't have a word for that. It doesn't exist. And I was thinking that basically it doesn't exist because we don't have a reality for that. We have nature, you have nature as well, but wilderness is something special, something different from nature. So I think Australia is and the United States as well. They are very peculiar countries because they still have that. They're both very rich, modern, urbanized and big cities and all that. And at the same time, next to the big cities, you have like wilderness. That's a very, very special situation, you know. And that's the point for my research, for writing the thesis and for making the movie ultimately is to get people to live a more sustainable life.
A discovery on an island off WA's northwest coast has confirmed humans lived in Australia 50,000 years ago, far earlier than previously believed. Archaeologists from UWA used new techniques to date artefacts, jewellery and tools, and have opened a unique window into the life of Australia's first people.
Booty Cave on Barrow Island off Western Australia's northwest coast is helping rewrite the history books.
Maybe that depression has been used as an anvil.
The jewellery, spoons and knives carved from shelves are providing a unique insight into the lives of Australia's first inhabitants.
We have a record of people living on that coastal plain, bringing back shellfish, using the rich resources, if you like, an Atlantis window into the past.
And that window is resetting the timetable for Australian settlement. Islands off the coast, which were once part of the mainland, have provided rich pickings for archaeologists. Conservative estimates placed Aboriginal people in Australia around 47,000 years ago.
We have actually established, using very, very conservative cross-checking, modelling to very, very high confidence levels, an age of occupation between 51,000 and 46. So we have clearly gone beyond that barrier, if you like.
This latest find at Booty Cave has been verified using the latest dating techniques, which are much more sensitive than carbon dating.
The way we've addressed that in this study is to use a different technique called optically stimulated luminescence dating, where we're actually dating the individual sand grains in the deposit.
The results pushed back the earliest artefacts from 47 to 50,000 years old.
The first Europeans to notice Australia were the Dutch about 400 years ago. So in that sort of time frame, 3,000 years is a very long length of time.
With other caves and artefacts long since submerged by rising seas, the next step for researchers at the island is to look underwater. Tom Wildey, ABC News.
Demystifying Criminal Justice Social Work in India.
This book is actually a combination of two ideologies that is coming together, criminology plus social work. It actually gives us lots of theoretical understanding and also some ideas around how this can be applied in practice.
It started at the end of 2012, I believe, and now it's 2017, so it's been a long time coming. It's a project that included top scholars from almost every major social work university in India.
Students who are studying social work, both in India and in Australia, will be able to use this book as a resource book. In most of the social work institutions in India particularly, they will use this book as a textbook, and it will also be used as a reference point for some of the practitioners who are already engaged in this area.
It will be a great opportunity for social work students to become engaged with not just criminology proper, but also the legal regimes that underpin criminal justice systems in India.
We have networked with a college called DePaul Institute of Science and Technology, which is based in Kerala, down south, where some of our students go on an exchange for four weeks. Sometimes they go for field placement for more than 2 months. So that's the time they also get an exposure to the Indian realities and how students are taught in an Indian context. So when they come back, they're also able to see how things are done in an Australian context. So this book, in a way, actually helps both the Australian students and also Indian students, because they can see how a social worker is trained in India and what benefits they can get out of it when they come and practice in an Australian context.
The project we have with the New Colombo Plan initiative is a 2-year exchange for 10 students each year to live to Samoa at the National University of Samoa and to study journalism. So we've been able to send 3 students this year, and we still have 10 spots available for next year. Some of the students have never been overseas, so they learn about living in another country with a language that's different, traditions, protocols that are different, and for journalism and journalism students, it really is a great experience.
Left in February for Samoa, where we spent 3 months doing an exchange program at the National University of Samoa. We studied in the Media and Journalism department, where we were able to do broadcast journalism, applied news. We were able to work in the field quite a bit. I actually had the opportunity to get published in the local newspaper.
The international relations side of my degree, I wanted to study abroad as one of my goals. I also wanted to get a bit of a sight into the media as well, because it was a media journalism placement, because the media's got such a large role in politics and democracy. Standout experience was definitely the people. I have made a lot of good friends.
3 students from James Cook University will return home after 3 months attending the National University of Samoa School of Media Journalism.
I definitely encourage other students to do this. It's a really good experience. Not just making new friends and getting out of your comfort zone, but also just to see from another culture's perspective